Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our continuing adventures. This time, no platform, so no Let's Defend, no Cyber Defenders, no It Came from Reddit. I figured I would kind of do a brief discussion on something that's kind of come up over the past few weeks. That being business email compromise, and have a discussion in regards to that. I believe I have covered going through and doing email analysis, but given the fact that I am helping a friend with a situation um, in my off time, I figured, I can't really go into a whole heck of a lot of detail, obviously, but given the fact that it's at the forefront of my mind, I figured, hey, it might make a decent topic to have a discussion about. So for those that may not have any idea, I've got a just generic search, and this is coming from CrowdStrike in regards to the term business email compromise. So, cyber attack technique whereby adversaries assume the digital identity of a trusted persona in an attempt to trick employees or customers into taking a desired action, such as making a payment or purchase, sharing data, or divulging sensitive information. And there have been numerous examples of these CEO impersonations inside of organizations where they find someone and make a request for all employee W-2 data. It's typically as tax season is coming around. Uh, Outside of that particular instance, it's usually all for uh, some sort of attempt to, say, change bank account information for maybe a vendor or a partner for the organization in question. So effectively, the way that it looks is an email comes in, employee gets it, takes a look. Oh, as they're looking at it, it's something along the lines of, the organization is being sold to maybe venture capitalist firm, or they're acquiring it. So as it is right now, everybody will be in play. Um, but because somebody else is now effectively going to be taking the reins, or at least here shortly, maybe the business name stays the same, but maybe it'll now be a division of investment firm XYZ. They're going to change it around. But what we'd like to do is go through and change, bank account details. So that way, as these projects of ours that we're getting done for you are, payment comes due, you can send it to the appropriate bank, all trying to be helpful, all great. When in reality, it's, say, a compromised account on the vendor's side. And then depending as to how much money's being asked, everything else like that, this is either a resume polishing event due to the organization not being able to handle the loss of funds, or somebody may be looking for a scapegoat. And considering the fact that there's not so much of a standard for an organization anymore, you've got startups, everything else like that have stayed far away from the old rigid corporate view of everything's got to be, Microsoft Exchange Server, Microsoft Active Directory, Outlook, Windows 10 devices, all that good stuff through there. They may be using, MacBooks, all tied to maybe like a Google Suite aspect. Or maybe it's Chromebooks. Maybe it's entirely all Google. So data sources are going to be all over the place. But effectively, as this stuff goes on, obviously the very first thing, especially if it's financial, this stuff gets filtered through. You're sitting there at your desk, you're having your, hopefully not your first cup of coffee for the day, or tea, whichever, pick your poison. And you get somebody that comes in from finance that says, hey, we had a fraudulent, money transfer. Depending as to, how your organization is stacked, set up, policies and procedures, everything else like that, especially if it's financial. Okay, somebody has to have a relationship with the bank that the money came out of. Hopefully somebody in finance or an accounts payable team member, something like that, that they can go through, then reach out to the bank and see as to whether or not if there's any possibility. Tell them, okay, fraudulent transfer, we need to get this clawed back. Maybe this has never happened before. So they may be looking to you in cybersecurity to go through and try to help them do this particular aspect. Okay, so you've given the finance or the accounts payable person instructions. Go through there. Okay, who got the notice? Who got the email or the communication stream, whatever the case is, to go through and have the bank details changed? Okay, now you're going to go take a look at them as to whether or not if you're going to go and if it's possible, go to their floor, sit at their desk, and be like, hey, okay, I need you to walk me through this. And they may still have the entire email chain. If they do, good. That's a portion of evidence you can sit there and control. You can have them basically assuming the general standard of, okay, this is heavily Microsoft focused. You take the emails, save them off to a folder. That way they're individual, EML files. I believe that's how they do them. So that way the header information's all intact, everything else like that. What you don't want them to do is to take the email chain and forward it to you. That entirely wipes out, because then the email header is just the forward internally. At which point, okay, it's not going to tell you anything. So you want them to basically save the emails into a different format, preferably as local files, and then attach all those into an email to yourself. Or if you've got an IT provided flash drive, plug that in, copy the stuff off. That way you can kind of do like a naming sequence in regards to all these. So maybe you go back to where the first aspect came through. The notice of, hey, an investment firm is buying us up, so we need to change bank details. Okay, good. Start with that one and then work your way down the chain, exporting everything out. So that way you've got maybe 0.eml, 1.eml. So you've got something to be able to relate this through as it works down the chain. And then effectively you're going to take those, you're going to go do email header analysis. So you've got any number of header analysis tools. You can go through and do it yourself if you're extremely comfortable with that. Or you could try to make it a little bit easier yourself. You could use something like MX Toolbox. I believe Google has one as well, as does Microsoft. I will dig those up and I will add them as a resource in the video description. So what I've got is I just dug into my spam folder, because obviously I can't show sample communications because it would really honk off my friend. But so basically I've just gone into my Gmail, found a spam email, something that is masquerading supposedly as the pharmacy chain CVS. And I'm just going to go through, grab that header, and we're just going to use that as an example throughout this portion. So it's analyze headers for MX Toolbox. And you take the text, so you're going to notice a bunch of, well, in this particular case, since I think it was sent through Microsoft, so you're going to see the X-Exchange or MS-Exchange. But technically, as a quick refresher, the header is a section of details or data that denote basically the path the email took to get to you. Contains the to, the from, the reply to, all that good stuff. So here we've got, okay, so SPF record. Through this particular portion, it looks like it's going to fail that because protection.outlook.com, domain of unctad.org, does not designate the IP address 20.61.116.72 as a permitted sender. Ergo, why this ended up as spam, because it checked and the SPF record didn't match. But let's assume it did. So suspension of disbelief. And of course let's see. So we get the delivered to, received, and I think it was closer down here. Yeah, so we get the to, we get the date. If I can actually move the mouse properly. Date, to, Xmailer. We get the carbon copy. We get the subject line. And let's see, and then we get the from CVS department, and then a bunch of random gobbledygook at randomgobbledygook.climatekids.net. We get the message ID. So if you actually have O365 or Exchange, you can go through and check the logs so you can take a look at this particular aspect. But effectively, you're going to go through and you're going to go do or analyze the header. Typically in this particular portion, you're not going to want to sit there and leave these out. I think the Microsoft and Google do not create any sort of, it doesn't remember any of this stuff. MX Toolbox does. Because what you could do is you could take the URL in question, copy it, and send it off to somebody, and then they could pull up the same exact page. If you're worried about that particular aspect and potentially tipping off anybody else, typically what you're going to go through and do, you're going to print this or export it as a PDF, save it in some way, shape, or fashion, so that way you've got the analysis that you can then refer back to. And then you could have, you could save it as a PDF, get everything adjusted just right. You know, probably instead of portrait, you go to landscape, turn off like the background graphics, stuff like that. But then you could effectively now save the header analysis as 0.pdf to match the same type of naming scheme you were using for the emails that were pulled off in the first place. So you have that immediately available. But if we take a look at this, okay, tool goes through, okay, DMARC compliant, no DMARC record found, okay. Realistically, we'd love to see DMARC and DKIM all light up green, but, and let's say for this particular instance, not so much as an example for MX Toolbox, but again, the suspension of disbelief, let's say all this was entirely fine. SPF record passes, DKIM is all implemented, DMARC, all that good stuff. Because we're running with the aspect that, okay, the vendor or the partner's email has been compromised. Somebody got in, somebody else has control. And so we're taking a look at this. This looks like this was sent through Microsoft, or to Microsoft, from Google, till it plopped out. But again, suspension of disbelief. Say all this stuff turned out fine. The sender IP address matches. And assuming, again, Office 365, I have to imagine the same type of tool would be available for G Suite, since they're trying to be there as the other alternative. But the other aspect is that you could go and take a look at, so say, again, suspension of disbelief. This is, what is the actual CVS email address? I don't even know. CVS.com, maybe? Yeah, CVS.com. Okay, so assuming that the organization that you, me, and everybody else that's watching this are a part of, one of our vendors is CVS. Maybe they're who we partnered with for the vaccines that were rolled out, whatever the case is. So, okay, we're getting an invoice from, or, something else is going on. Maybe CVS is, denoting of, hey, somebody else is buying us up, so on and so forth. Maybe Walgreens. Again, suspension of disbelief. But somebody's coming in, somebody's buying them. So that particular case, okay, we need to switch this stuff around, so new bank account information. But it does come from CVS.com. I don't know. Joe Schmo at cvs.com. Everything entirely matches. There's communication history that we can go back and take a look in either O365, or I'm assuming G Suite would have the same type of options that we can take a look, and we can see from, what infrastructure CVS is using. So if we take that, and the quickest typically is Talos. We want to find out, okay, what kind of infrastructure, email-wise, is this denoting? So usually there's a section for mail server. Yeah, mail servers. Okay, so Mimecast. So we would expect to see SPF records that would reflect Mimecast. We would expect to see the sending IP from Mimecast sections, since any internal CVS email is going to hit them or go to Mimecast. Mimecast is then going to send it out, and then whatever you have in front. So maybe you got a proof point in front. All this is going to match. Again, suspension of disbelief. But effectively, this was the situation that brought this to the forefront is, for my friend's situation, their vendor, their email account, or their whole account, it looks like, was probably compromised. They've been not as forthcoming with information. So effectively, the emails that were being sent in, the from and the reply to matched perfectly. So one of the other instances you may see is a bad actor may take control of an email address, but they may decide to then kind of pivot the communication stream over. So, they may have cvs.corn, because if you looked at it really quickly, I mean, it's amazing how quickly corn and com all come together, because the spacing for the R and the N make it look remarkably like COM. And before anybody asks, yes, I have seen that actually gone through and be done. So everything matches, everything comes through. So, okay, what are you looking for at that particular point? We've already given instruction to finance to go talk to the bank. Hey, we had a wire transfer due to fraud. Any chance we can get the money back? We're giving them instructions. We're gathering the email chain of communication. We're doing header analysis. We're saving all that together in the event that this has to go. The lawyers get involved, because we just want the info. We want it all together. We want it ready to go in the event that we have to, maybe we have to present it to some people. Maybe the CEO of our company wants to sit there and have better understanding exactly what happened. So you may have to sit there and reference back to this stuff. Last thing you want to be doing is trying to play catch up. So everything passes. SPF, DMARC, the files were sent over. They all look legitimate. There's no, poisoned, malicious Word document attached or anything else like that. It's like, hey, they've literally just filled out the forms as needed to go through and have the bank account changed. I mean, realistically, then you probably would want to turn around and talk to finance or AP in regards to, okay, establishing a list of who can go through and do it, maybe verification by a phone call if that's not already in place. It's kind of sad to have to build the policy after the money's already gone or the W-2 data's already gone. But I guess if there's ever an impetus to get something done, it's while you still got that boot print on your butt. So, anyways, so effectively, everything matches, everything's good. You reply back to the email, it goes exactly to joeschmo@cvs.com. There's no wordplay, nothing else like that. Okay, yeah, sure. According to the communication chain, whoever in your finance department or accounts payable is like, yeah, sure, we can have that done. Looks like everything's all good on the paperwork. We'll go through and we'll get everything scheduled to go out here at the end of business day. So effectively, okay, money's going to go out at the particular time that this is going on. Not much you can do about it until basically it's either raised up. Because now, maybe you've got something set up for notification for oddities in regards to email. Maybe it flags a subject line. If you were to go through and investigate it, you get that a copy of that email as it comes in regards to, hey, we're being bought up by an investment firm, so ownership's going to change, bank account's going to change, so on and so forth. Somehow you've got some sort of rule set up so that this stuff comes and it's now flat in your lap. You're going to take a look at that. You're going to do the same type of investigation. You're going to take a look at the sending IP. Do we have a history of communication from CVS from, if not this exact IP, then one similar to it? So if we take a look at it and take a look at that sending IP, does it go back to Mimecast? Hopefully, yes. In this particular example that we're using, yes, it does. Everything looks perfectly fine. I mean, you may have a small bug in the back of your brain that'd be like, maybe I should talk to somebody who this is going to and see as to what the general policy is. I know that typically IT stays on their side of the fence, finance stays on their side of the fence, but and then depending on the size of the organization, maybe there's a fraud team, they stay on their side. Maybe there's, small interminglings here and there, but I mean, if you effectively look at this stuff, you may just want to ask the question. If you find yourself in this particular situation where somehow you've gotten an email that everything matches, you may want to just find out what the policy is. And then maybe you can make a suggestion. Not trying to step on other people's toes, but maybe you've seen something like this before. And that's kind of the problem. We all tend to end up mostly being in our own individual silos when everyone's experience is different. So effectively, if there were more of a meeting of the minds, it might shake out some good ideas. But okay, let's go back to the situation. All this stuff is done. We've gone through, we've got the emails, we've done header analysis in MX Toolbox, we've saved out the information as it comes through. I suppose I should probably show that particular aspect. So down at the bottom, permanently forget this email header, bottom left. And it takes you just straight back to the header analysis page, and that URL no longer is valid. So that header is now gone. So hopefully you exported it, otherwise you're going to have to go grab the header again and dump it in. Okay, so say, we've alerted the vendor, we took a look, we found a phone number, especially if this is strictly business email compromise, assume any email communication is going to be filtered. In other words, the bad actor is set up to the point that if you sit there and try to send maybe an email to the people involved with the subject line of fraud, it's just going to get immediately trashed. So you're not going to rely on, the signatures in the emails for the individual people. You're going to go find their web domain, and you're effectively going to pray that, they haven't altered the web page and changed the phone number. You might be able to go back to a far enough point and maybe taking a look at the signatures at some particular point. Maybe the signature changes. Maybe the email address stays the same, but the phone number changes. Well, then pretty good bet. Okay, you have a rough time as to when the bad actor got in from that particular point. And so you would more than likely refer to the earlier phone number and then try to compare that against, business directories. I mean, we've got Google. So specifically, if I was going to go and take a look at trying to find a contact number, I mean, you got multiple ones here. Website direction, okay, phone numbers right there in Target. Or Cicero, Illinois. And before anybody wonders, no, this is not my area. Again, VPN. Not that it seems like anybody's got a, or that I've got a target on my back, but just in case anybody seems to think. So we're going to compare that about what we can find publicly available. We're going to make a phone call, or we're going to have a lawyer make a phone call. Again, hopefully you've got this stuff put together, but if you are part of an IR team, then more than likely it's going to be you that's going to be sitting there trying to take the reins and run this sucker down to the ground. Or if there's a incident commander that's been declared, maybe it's your manager. Now, okay, you're going to want to sit there and make sure that all the analysis that you've done filters up to them. They can review it, or they can sit there and be like, okay, I need a second set of eyes on this just so we can verify. We're going to go through, we're going to, again, check the sending IP, check the history in regards to it. So if we take a look at where was it? Okay. In the SPF record, the IP address in question, the unctad.org, does not designate 20.61.116.72 as a designated sender. So let's go and let's take the particular address and let's run it through here. And obviously, depending as to what type of analysis you do in regards to the domain and the sending IP address, yeah, so through Microsoft. So maybe you're running it through Talos. Maybe you're running it through also OTX for Alien Vault, their publicly available stuff. Maybe you're running it through Gray Noise or IBM X-Force Threat Exchange. I mean, it may not hurt to go through and run some of this stuff through. I mean, maybe. I mean, if you were to take the sending IP and during the particular incident, maybe this is widespread on the vendor side. So CVS is just royally compromised and they're sending out a bunch of crap. I mean, you would kind of expect Mimecast to go through and have done something for the checks. But even with these checks, this is a compromised account. This is not a, we're trying to spoof. This is a full-on account compromise. So they literally own it. They can send out whatever they want. They can set whatever rules they want. That would be the other aspect to take a look at for cleanup. But I figured at a particular point we'll flip the script and, okay, you know, what's it like to be on the receiving end of, you know, hey, you got a phone call. Yeah, you guys have somebody that's compromised that's sending stuff out. But so you're going to go through, you're going to do your checks here. You may save this stuff off or, you know, maybe denote, you know, grab the URL and denote that, okay, I took the sending IP addresses that we've seen, that we have a history with involving CVS. I've run them all through publicly available intel sources and nothing stands out. Realistically, it probably would be better to sit there and take snapshots of the screens as they're there, so that way you have something that's time and dated, because, okay, what if it takes Talos an extra couple of days in order for everything to come through? All of a sudden now they're saying, yeah, you know, or sender IP reputation is bad. Spam level is, you know, 100% or whatever the case is. It's just basically bad. And then the block lists. At least if you take a snapshot, you've got a capture of the moment in time. Or you do like what you did with the header analysis. You go through, save the screen or the results as a PDF, and you know, you mark it as like sending IP. Something to go through and actually have a point in time. So we've got all this particular portion. We've gone back. We've investigated. Okay, yes, this is all sender related, everything else like that. Okay, now we're going to go and we're going to make a phone call. And we're going to sit there and at least get the ball rolling. Hey, you know, I need to talk to Joe Schmo. And hopefully you're not getting the whole aspect of it. Joe Schmo doesn't work here anymore. Let me get you, you know, Tina Smith, his replacement. That's not really what you really want to hear, because then it's the particular aspect. Okay, did they just leave the account up and running? Is Joe actually the bad actor in this case? It's not a compromised account. But let's assume, for the sake of argument, Joe Schmo's still there. He just, a week earlier he got a phishing attempt that actually succeeded. It was enough to surprise him that he didn't question it. He just gave over the credentials, and now some bad actors got access to the account. You're gonna find the whatever information you need to make the phone call. You're gonna sit there and begin to alert them of the fact of, hey, we have what we think to be, we think your email's been compromised. Send out a fraudulent, change of bank detail. We need you to see about getting something involved, in regards to get your IT people involved, your incident people, whatever you have to do in order to sit there and start running this down on your side. Okay, notifications out of the way. Now we're not flipping the script yet. We're just about there though. So as the IR person that has to respond to this, that okay, money's gone out, everything else like that. Hopefully I got that pause in time. Had to sneeze. We are going to go back. We're going to take a look at the people that are involved in this chain. Hopefully it's just, one or two. It's maybe a person in finance, and maybe it's a salesperson. We're going to go through and we're going to investigate logins for their accounts, because we want to make absolutely sure that this is not something on our side. So we're going to check their login history. We may go back, 3 to 6 months, 12 months. Realistically, it's going to come down to your password policy change limit. And of course, then it's having to blow the nose. Okay, so obviously, if everyone's password had to be changed during the middle of this, okay, you're still going to want to sit there and take a look. You're going to want to take a look and see, okay, hopefully you've got MFA. You might, take those particular individuals into a, conference room, or one at a time, private phone call, be like, hey, I just need to know. I mean, not trying to, paint you as the bad guy, anything else like that. We're going bedside manner. We want to sit there and make sure that these people know that, okay, no one's mad. You're not in trouble as it sits. I just need you to be honest with me. Did you get a bunch of MFA requests when you weren't trying to sign into anything? Is anything, no matter how small, seemed weird the past month, 2 months, 3 months? Something that maybe you were reticent to go through and, raise it up to IT. And they may tell you, it's just like, no, everything's been entirely fine. I mean, a couple of, maybe higher than normal spam emails, everything else like that. You checked with them. You give them the opportunity. Realize that some of us are more, we want the machine aspect rather than the human aspect, okay? Then maybe you could talk to the incident commander, and you can get somebody else that has more quote-unquote bedside manner to talk to them. Because that's just what it is. You want to have a discussion with them. You don't want it to be an interrogation. You don't want to sit there and start turning your employees against you in regards to that aspect. May there be repercussions down the road? Maybe. It all depends as our organization and its structure. Maybe they take a hard line. I mean, I've seen employers that effectively they will attempt to hold you financially responsible for damage done because you ran malware in the environment. I don't know as to whether or not if there's been any particular cases taken to court in regards to that, but I don't know. So you're going to give them the opportunity. Because obviously, if it's just like, well, I logged in, and then like 5 minutes later, I got another MFA request. I thought it was a little bit weird, but I had just signed in, so I proved it again, and I mean, nothing stopped working. It's like, okay, try to get the when, where, what, how, and now you're going to go and you're going to take a look at the logins for that particular individual. Maybe it was an MFA hiccup. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe all of a sudden, this particular user in question, maybe they're all remote. Maybe their home ISP is Comcast, and you've got, as you look backwards, going back 1, 2, 3, 4 months, whatever you've got for logging, yeah, it all shows Comcast, except for the time frame that she or he mentioned. We got a CenturyLink IP. Kind of matches. I mean, it's not Comcast, but and you may go back. It's like, I mean, did you go to a coffee house? Did you go to a friend's at the particular time while you were working? And maybe they fess up. It's like, okay, yeah, I went to a coffee shop. So I did it or I started at home, and then I went back, and I went to the local Starbucks or Big B or what's the coffee house in Mr. Robot? Ron's Coffee or whatever it was. Because their fiber internet. Well, we'll not mention as to what was going on behind the scenes there, but okay, you can explain it now. Whereas before, it's the giant large question. Now it looks like maybe, instead of it's just wholly, CVS's fault in this particular case. Again, no hate to CVS. I'm just using him as an example. Maybe this is a two-factor aspect to this. Maybe they got in to somebody in finance or somebody else that was involved in this particular chain. But let's say you go through, you check, and you've got evidence that everybody is where they need to be. People that are, working from home that have Comcast logins all day long. You go all the way back to 12 months, and they are religious from Comcast. Obviously, the IP address may change, but it's, you go, you take it, dump it into Talos or wherever your, IP checker of choice is, and it's like, oh yeah, Comcast or Xfinity or something along those same veins. It's okay, you're fairly certain that everything's fine. You're then going to move, you're going to take a look and maybe kind of give a quick check of the emails that have come to them, emails that they've sent. You're not going to really go taking a look at every single one, but you're going to see as to whether or not if anything kind of flags. I mean, did they get an invoice from a Pakistani email address? Something that might further explain that, okay, maybe this is all not CVS's fault. Maybe there's remediation we need to do on our side. You're then going to pivot, and I mean, I'm assuming this from the aspect that you yourself are just by yourself doing this. If a whole incident team has been stood up to go through and firefight these particular aspects, then hopefully there would be some deviate or dividing of what needs to be done. So you're going to go and you're going to take a look at the endpoints that these people touch that are involved in this. Has your Sentinel-1 flagged anything? Has your Huntress or Red Canary or whatever the case, have they flagged anything involving these workstations or these particular accounts that are involved in this situation? Even if it goes back a little bit further. Maybe we expect everything here within the period of a few weeks, so say a month. If they flag something earlier, okay, maybe something got missed. Maybe we need to sit there and do a deep dive on their workstation. But let's say this is all just CVS's fault. Now we've reached the particular point. I mean, again, we're going to document all the things we've done. So that we've extracted the emails, we've done header analysis, here's the results of the header analysis. We've gone through and we've built up our case that the sending IP address matches what we've seen previously from the at cvs.com. They all come back to Mimecast, everything else like that. So it's all as working as expected. No oddities, as at least as it sits there. And the emails in question, we've gone through and we've done, or as part of the header analysis, we've looked at the reply to portions of the header, and they entirely match. So it's not a, CVS or from Joe Schmo at cvs.com, but the reply to is Joe Schmo at cvs.corn. In order to move that communication stream off, to try to basically extend how long this stream goes back and forth. Maybe they can sit there and dig up a few more invoices that they can try to get paid before access is discovered and all this stuff gets cut off. Or before that first finding of fraud, because maybe somebody else at CVS, their accounts payable reaches out. It's like, hey, where's our $500,000 that for invoice XYZ? Well, we paid that. We've got the details here. You guys asked for a change in bank details on January 1st, and so we did exactly as we were supposed to. It's like, no, the money didn't go to us. Anyways. Okay, so now we flip this over. Okay. Now let's take it from the aspect of how it would be to be in CVS issues. Again, just as an example. Now put yourself in that particular aspect. The organization that had the money taken from them, they've reached out to Joe Schmo via phone, informed them, like, hey, we want to see about trying to have a phone conversation. Hopefully you can get your IT people involved, everything else like that. We just bring to the table what we have, try to figure out what we're going to do now. So Joe Schmo goes, talks to somebody in IT, they go through, they get a small team stood up, and they start taking a look. This is the portion that we'll go through and kind of role play here. So we're going to take a look, and it's going to be mostly, hopefully, multiple people involved as opposed to just putting it all on one person's shoulders. But so it's going to be the same type of aspect. Okay, we're going to ask Joe Schmo, anything seem weird? We're going to do workstation analysis for Joe Schmo, and we may expand that to anybody else that's involved in the chain of communications. We want to see those particular emails because we want to do our own header analysis to make sure nothing's missing. And then we want to go and maybe we want to reach out to Mimecast and we want to find out, hey, we've got what looks like emails that were sent from Joe Schmo at cvs.com. And we want to see your logging in regards to this situation to find out as to whether or not if these emails pass through your infrastructure. We want to take a look at Joe Schmo's workstation. We want to go through and audit his recent emails. And we want to do the same exact aspect of, at the same point, we also want to take a look at the emails that have been coming and going from the victim in this particular case for the financial loss. We want to make sure that, okay, we're checking their email sending a history. It's not that we don't trust them, but something's happened, so now we need to verify. Is everything matched? There's no, in any of these emails, there wasn't an instance where, email came to CVS or Joe Schmo at cvs.com from Jane Smith at, I don't know, whatever the organization, target.com. Again, not trying to call anybody out. Just first thing that pops to head or into mind. So they're going to do the same exact portion of analysis because they want to make sure that, this wasn't some sort of pivot off of, the other person's infrastructure, the other organizations. And in this particular case, they'll go through the look. It's like, yep, the from and the reply to, they all match in everything that we can find. At no particular point do we notice um, signature changes in the emails going back and forth, SPF records all pass, sending IPs match the history that we have. Um, there was no unexpected attachments. Hopefully, at this particular point, they've gone and taken a closer look at Joe Schmo's email account, specifically looking for any sort of rules or forwarding that's been set up in place. Because more than likely, we will probably find something to denote this particular aspect, that maybe emails with the subject line of or that contain the word like bank change or whatever it was that initially was sent from Joe Schmo at cvs.com over to Jane Smith at target.com. In regards to this particular aspect, they're going to perform the same type of analysis: the header, sending IP, and the rest. And what they'll more than likely find is, as they dig into Joe Schmo, okay, well, you had that phishing email a week previous. Maybe it's still sitting in his inbox. Maybe as they start digging through this stuff, they find that and they flag on that and they pivot on that. And they can match that, okay, the web activity matches. So, okay, we have the notion that your workstation, a week before this supposed, bank changed email went out, that you hit the domain in question for this phishing email. And it looks like it followed all the way through. And then we start seeing weird logins, a couple of days later from from Lithuania or somewhere in the Middle East or China, whatever the case is. Something that does not fit the established baseline. Maybe Joe Schmo always comes into the office. So you're expecting that, okay, it's going to be the company's public IP address where this stuff would run out. Maybe he does some work from home. Okay, so he's got a AT&T IP address at home. Okay, well, we can knock those out. Okay, so why do we have logins from China, Taiwan, South Korea, North Korea? And of course, being in that particular aspect is not going to be overly good, because, okay, now the organization, CVS in this case, has to acknowledge, okay, yeah, we had apparently account was breached. Nothing we had in place picked up anything until basically you raised the alarm, and then we had to do it by manual review. And I'm sure there will be some sort of statement regards to, we take our vendors and our business partners, data and finances we take it very seriously. So, we're going to go through and we're going to revamp, and we're going to make things better. And yeah. But effectively, at the end of the day, okay, you've been able to sit there and put two and two together. You've got the evidence to back the conclusion that, yeah, CVS is at fault. So now the fun aspect would be, what happens when CVS says, no, we still want our $500,000, but we refuse to accept that, this is, breach of Joe Schmo had anything to do with you sending the money because of a failure in your process. If we shouldn't be penalized not being paid $500,000. Then come the lawyers. And at that particular point, you'll be glad that you've sat there and created the documentation, the snapshots, the time. You may have to go through and change. Technically, if the lawyers get involved, you're going to take a back seat and you're going to move into more of a supporting role for them. You let them do what they're going to do at the business's direction, and you try to be as helpful as possible. You get them whatever information that you can sit there and scrounge up. So if a threat intel bulletin comes out, or there's, public discussions on, say, Twitter about, hey, careful while doing business with CVS because, they stole, 1.5 million from us and then told us we never made the payment or something along those lines. Okay. I mean, that's somebody else having the particular aspect. And then maybe legal might want to reach out to them to see as to whether or not, okay, what kind of details can you share? And the business may decide that they want to share some details from your side. Maybe reaching something towards a class action. Because I think it's what, if you have more than a handful of people that have been affected? I think. I'm not a lawyer. And no, I've never played one on television. So effectively, that would be a particular point where we find ourselves. You're going to take the supporting role. You're going to do what you can. And hopefully you got all your ducks in a row. And, I mean, you may want to go back. Maybe you led the charge. You checked all the emails coming through. Maybe you got a second, or you asked for a second set of eyes just to make sure you didn't miss something. Second set of eyes on the sending IP history. Second set of eyes on the workstation analysis, just to make sure. That way, in the event that if lawyers get involved, okay, you got two people that can sign off on that. Yes, two different people, complementing skill sets, everything else along those lines have come to the same exact conclusion. I guess realistically, that would then depend as to whether or not if the organization wants to bring in a forensics firm or somebody else to go through and do their own analysis, maybe to help build an additional case that, yes, okay, we've gone through, done mostly the same with our own independent experts, and our findings match exactly what, the IR team found for, the emails in question for CVS. I mean, you would hope as an organization you'd take responsibility, go through and try to make stuff right. But usually it's not uncommon for there to be a decent amount of pushback in the beginning for the organization that's been compromised because they haven't had the time to go through. And any sort of initial admittance of guilt is not going to help them in the long run. And I think they've kind of figured that particular aspect out. But as they go through and you try to help them, with either breadcrumbs or full-blown, all the data on a silver platter to help them with their investigation, that may sit there and start going from an adamant no, this is your problem, to okay, we found collaborating evidence, you may be onto something. Begrudgingly sit there and accept that, okay, yeah, we might have dropped the ball here. It just effectively be persistent as that stuff sits. And I realize, yes, a lot of this is talking head as this stuff sits through, but I don't have an AD environment I can show you going through and doing all this stuff, and the aspect that there's so many different aspects. But let's say everybody's just using personal Gmail accounts. It's, that whole startup aspect. Maybe everybody's using Gmail accounts and, they're just sending it from their personal stuff because, maybe they're just some sort of design firm. They don't really care in regards to anything else. I mean, as long as, their people can sit there and whip out their MacBooks and make things look pretty and functional and everything else like that, okay. I mean, it's not like they would need the overhead of Active Directory. I mean, maybe they've got, a studio apartment that's been converted. They got some sort of NAS device on their network there, and everybody just shows up with their Chromebooks or their MacBooks and their drawing tablets and everything else like that, and it's how they do business. And of course, of any Gmail page. Okay. So they would still have the aspect, like for Google, to go through and check the last login portions for those particular aspects. So obviously, if the same type of scenario played out, then okay, maybe it's a design firm, New York studio apartment, and they're just a bunch of kids fresh out of college that are putting this stuff together. Everything's Google, short of the MacBooks and the design apps that they would have to use, everything else like that. But email communications, everything else like that would be through there. Most of all these different platforms have abilities to take a look at recent portions or recent activity. I'm fairly certain that even Yahoo has it, so as to whether or not for some reason they had Yahoo email addresses. Of course, it would be more of an impetus to be like, yeah, I don't really feel overly comfortable trying to communicate with a personal, so why do you not have a business email account? I think there's enough of the um, platforms that are out there that effectively just to bring everything to give them more of a professional look at a very low cost. And I would assume that they would have platforms as well. But anybody you could think of. So depending on the size of your org, maybe you reach out. Maybe you've got a particular team for that's just entirely centered around baseline user activity. You reach out to them. You have maybe some O365 SMEs. Maybe you reach out to them. Or hopefully that they would be involved as part of the incident team that would be stood up to go through and try to work this stuff. And at the end of the day, hopefully you get the money back. But if you don't, this has got to go, to court, something else like that. Hopefully you've been at least a little bit more prepared to go through and have all your stuff documented. Now, obviously, your organization that you work for may have different documentation requirements, may want things a certain way. So obviously you make sure to adhere to that as much as possible, as opposed to just going through and just randomly creating a bunch of PDFs from header analysis. Or maybe they don't have anything at all, and you're just kind of winging it. Folder for the event, a Notepad++ or Sublime Text, something else along those lines, to basically just get the quick who, what, where, when, how, and then as to whether or not if you've got pull details of the email chains in question where this stuff is noticed. So back to that, exporting 0.eml, 1.eml. Maybe you expand those particular portions to include the date that it came in, who the sender was, recipient, sending IP, all that good stuff. So that way you can just kind of quickly go through there as opposed to having to try to remember which particular email was what. But again, it all comes down to documentation style as well, or what the requirements are as set out by the organization. So hopefully that has helped in some regard. I wish I could give more details in regards to what my friend is going through, but it wasn't W-2, it was financial. Past that point, I can't say which friend, I can't say which organizations are involved. No, it's not CVS, and no, it's not Target. That would be kind of dumb on my part. But they were just the first things to basically pop into mind. So, as far as I know, neither of those two are breached. So, please don't walk away from this particular, thought exercise as thinking that either of them are having problems. Because I don't really want to sit there and have to deal with fallout from that. But any questions, comments, concerns? The stuff is, yes, there, down at the bottom. I am not always available because sometimes I've got to roll up my sleeves and, dive into BECs for friends and try to help. But, or maybe you disagree with something in regards to laying out that particular aspect. I mean, it'd be perfect thing to sit there and start a conversation in regards to it. The only thing I ask is be respectful. And just take it from there. Maybe this starts a conversation on LinkedIn. Maybe this starts a conversation on Twitter. Maybe this starts a conversation in the YouTube comments. I don't know. I mean, I did a search, and it looks like basically like the last type of info was up a couple of years ago. I mean, it was a quick search, so I could be entirely wrong. I mean, if you've got somebody that's, covered this topic that you want to share, please do. I mean, I figured if I didn't talk about this, somebody else would. Not this particular event, but a similar enough event. So, all that being said, I'll get off the soapbox, stop being the talking head, and I will see everybody in the next video. Hopefully, let's defend or cyber defenders.